There's this case of this doctor at Brown University in Rhode Island who went back overseas to attend the funeral of a Hamas leader.
Yeah.
And so again, is this very
The
similar?
Hezbollah leader.
Hezbollah leader, apologies. Is that similar to what you just described, or is that in any way different case wise?
No, I think, first of all, she lied through her teeth. What she said is, I don't follow the political teachings of Nasrallah, just his religious teachings. There is no distinction. What Nasrallah has said is that the Quran demands that you kill every Jew hiding behind every rock, that you murder every Jew, and that Israel can't exist. The idea that she believes in his religious statements, but not his political statements, is absolutely absurd. So, I think that going to that funeral of Nasrallah, this mass murderer, obviously shows support. Now, she's not a green card holder, so her status is much more easily disturbed. But then you have a Yale Law School professor who was hired at Yale Law School for the civil rights program, who turns out to be a shill for Iran. There are many people in this country, because Qatar pays for them and pays money, large amounts of money. Usually it's dark money, to universities, and many of them accept the money on condition that they'll hire these thugs who are really agents for foreign countries. So, look, Donald Trump has a point here, and we ought not to dismiss it. And let's give the administration an opportunity to prove their case. Sometimes instead of saying ready, aim, fire, this administration says fire first, then ready, aim. And that's when the courts come in and say, wait a minute, before you fire all these people, before you deport these people, a little due process. But let's not confuse that with support for these people on the merits.
100%. All right, one last thing on immigration, and then I want to move to pardons. Before I do this, the Heritage Foundation has sought, I guess it's a Freedom of Information Act, on Prince Harry's visa application to come to the United States, because he admits in his book Spare that he used multiple drugs, illegal drugs, including cocaine and psychedelics. If he checked no, that he didn't use drugs on that form, is that evidence of special use? Is that cause for removal? Where does that fall? I see you smiling, so I didn't even. I was so excited to hear your answer on this one.
Well, you couldn't have asked a better person. One of my first clients ever in history was John Lennon, the Beatle,
Yeah.
and Nixon administration wanted to have him deported because he had not acknowledged his use of marijuana, which was then illegal in England. And we fought the case all the way up, and we won. And it was the worst case I ever won. I wish I had lost the case. If I had lost, John Lennon would have been deported back to England. He'd still be alive and singing today. I once said that to his wife, and she was furious at me. She was so happy we had won the case, because she said he had the best 10 years of his life between the time we won the case and the time he was murdered on streets of New York. So, yes, in theory, you can be deported if you deny drug use when you have, in fact, used drugs. We were able to win in the John Lennon case because the law was very unclear. But in theory, if you lie in any way on a material fact in your application, you can be deported.
But let's just say he did. Is that I mean, is it, hey, we need to uphold the law, or do we, because of Prince Harry and I mean, like, how do you think, like, I also find it interesting that like, because he's a public figure, that they actually will get access to these records. Isn't that in itself an
Yeah, no,
anomaly?
yeah, and it does suggest the double standard. Look, Prince Harry ought to be allowed to stay in the United States. I don't think he ought to be deported. I don't think John Lennon should have been deported. But sometimes deportations are used for partisan or political reasons. Again, we need to have a single standard in practice.
All right, let's move to pardons for a second.
Sure.
President Trump has suggested that because Joe Biden, there's a lot of evidence that he used the auto pen for a lot of things. Many politicians use auto pens, senators, cabinet members, etc. The president himself. Does, first, on its face, does it even matter how the document was signed, whether it's an auto pen or in person?
It matters depending on whether you're talking about a pardon or a bill. The Constitution.
Whoa, why? Why?
Constitution expressly says about a bill, the president, shall sign it. He shall sign it. That's in the Constitution. Whereas for pardon, all it says is he has the power to grant pardons. It doesn't require a signature, pen on paper. But for a bill, it does. And so I do think that if a president uses an auto pen, the kind of auto pen we have now, remember Thomas Jefferson back in the 1700s invented the auto pen. Basically, what he had is a pen that he would sign, and then it would be attached to a piece of metal, and there'd be another signature on another piece of paper. So he would have a copy of that. That's a different kind of auto pen. The kind of auto pen you obviously used when you were in the White House, and that my son used when he was an intern for a senator. The senator or the president doesn't even know when you write a Christmas card or a congratulatory note, what's in the content. So when it comes to the pardon, what you need to know is that President Biden himself specifically authorized the pardon. If he authorized it orally, then it doesn't matter whether he did it in writing or whether the writing was from an auto pen or not. But if he didn't know about it, and remember, we have some interviews now with Biden where he said, "Did I sign that? I don't think I signed that. I don't remember signing that." So, you have to demonstrate that the president authorized the use of the auto pen. The auto pen can be very dangerous because, as you know, it can be used without the knowledge of the
Oh,
principal.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's sort of like a DocuSign, in my opinion, which is, can I sign documents by DocuSign? Sure. But if somebody hacked my computer and signed it, I don't know that that would have the same weight of law. But let's just stop for a second. Let's take this piece by piece. Let's say that the Inflation Reduction Act was signed, provable, like you could prove it, signed by AutoPen. Would that invalidate the law, the bill?
I think it would under the Constitution. Now, who would have standing to raise that is a hard question. Let me tell you, for the future, no bill should ever be signed by AutoPen.
Fair enough. I got it. I didn't know this, though.
It's in the Constitution. Just read the words. It's in Article 1. It says the president, and then it says he shall sign, not may sign. Can't delegate it. He can't delegate it to the vice president or to the secretary of the treasury. He has to sign it. And by he signing it, I think it means he has to hold that pen and actually do the actual signature. But for pardons, there is no such requirement in the Constitution.
So then let's go to the second piece. If you could prove, if Biden did an interview and he said, "Yeah, I don't remember these pardons, or I don't remember the one for Liz Cheney or something," would that invalidate the pardon if he specifically said, "I can't remember it"? Would that prove that piece of it then?
I think it would. And the question then would be who has standing. You and I wouldn't have standing to challenge a pardon of Liz Cheney. The only way to challenge it is the prosecution would have to go after Liz Cheney for one of those crimes. You have to raise as a defense the pardon, and then the government would have to prove, the pardon was invalid. It's not going to happen, but it's an interesting law school hypothetical.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that.
Legal views so much that I hereby give you an inflated Harvard A+ for your legal. Not worth it these days, but now you have it.
Well, it means a lot because it's free. Because I'm sure it was like 80. It's like 80 grand to take a class.
A year, not just 80.
Yeah. I know that's what I mean for the class. You mentioned something a minute ago where you talked about the president's use of the Aliens Enemies Act from 1798. I thought what was funny though, the other day, Tom Homan is on the driveway of the White House, and somebody says to him, a reporter, should you really be using a 200-year-old law? And Tom Homan had this great retort, regardless of whether or not you agree with the law or not. And he said, "Don't we still use the Constitution?" And I thought about it further. Which is, doesn't the press cloak themselves in the First Amendment? How old is that? I just found it funny that a reporter would talk about the age of a law under the guise, well, how old's the Constitution? How old's the First Amendment? And I thought that was a pretty weak retort.
Not only that, but I collect things, and I have a copy of the first bills that were ever passed by Congress, and many of them are still being used. The Judiciary Act is still in force. Many acts that were done by the framing fathers of our Constitution, including, Madison. By the way, Jefferson loved his auto pen so much, he had one made for his friend Madison. So Madison also had an auto pen that he used when he was president of the United States. So it was not only Jefferson. But you're, of course, right. Old is good when it comes to constitutional and historical and precedent. So let's not diminish 1798 laws. A lot of them are still on the books.
All right. The last thing I want to ask you about is the Epstein files. The White House put out this booklet the other day. A lot of people said it was just recycled old news. What do you, I mean, from your opinion, what else should come out? What else can come out?
Look,
What else will come out? And why?
I this is not an opinion. This is a fact. I have seen. Remember, I was accused falsely in the
Yes.
Epstein, and ultimately I was completely cleared. The woman admitted that she may have mistook me for somebody else and withdrew all of her lawsuits. And so from day one, from the day I was accused, I said I want every document out because I knew every document would prove I was innocent. So let me tell you, I know for a fact documents are being suppressed. And they're being suppressed to protect individuals. I know the names of the individuals. I know why they're being suppressed. I know who's suppressing them, but I'm bound by confidentiality from a judge and cases, and I can't disclose what I know. But I hand to God, I know the names of people whose files are being suppressed in order to protect them, and that's wrong.
Just out of curiosity, without names, are these politicians, business leaders, both?
They're everything. And let me tell you, a lot of them are, at least one of them is somebody who was accused. Others are accusers. And the judges have said, if somebody calls themselves a victim, we're not going to give any information about them, but they may not be victims. They may be perpetrators. So we don't have information about false accusers. And we know there have been many false accusers who have accused innocent people for money, and those records are being deliberately, willfully suppressed. And they shouldn't be suppressed. If the accusation is allowed out, so should the material that diminishes the credibility of the accuser. We want total transparency on this. Every single document, no redaction. That's what I've said from day one. I waive any of my rights of privacy. Anything there is about me, I'm happy because it will be exculpatory, because I know I haven't touched a woman other than my wife from the day I met Jeffrey Epstein. I don't even hug people, but I was falsely accused and I was able to prove it. And I was able to prove it through documents. And I want other people to be able to disprove false accusations through documents. But these documents are being suppressed and withheld.
Okay, so then this is literally the last question. Do you have confidence that when Pam Bondi says, I'm ordering the FBI to give me these documents to go through, will we ultimately see the documents and the redactions that you're referring to, or are we going to get more of the same?
I hope so. I have a lot of faith in Pam Bondi. She and I worked together closely on the first Trump impeachment. She is a wonderful, honest woman. I think she will do everything she can within the law. But judges are the ones who are preventing some of the material from coming out.
Okay, so she could want to do it. We could see like another injunction.
Yeah, it's possible. Or she could want to do it, but just feel constrained by rulings of the judge that she's not in a position to challenge. But look, I hope she releases everything. She is well intentioned, and the American public have a right to know everything, not just partially. Let's go to the Kennedy. Do you think that everything about Kennedy is being released? I not tell you what I know about Kennedy that isn't being released. Kennedy had numerous affairs while he was president with people with who could provide a motive for his assassination. We know that he had affairs with people involved with the mafia. Is that stuff coming out? I haven't heard a word about Kennedy's affairs coming out. Now we know Kennedy's grandson now is babbling about, no, none of this stuff should come out. I think there's a lot of stuff about John Kennedy that we don't know, and the FBI and the CIA had to have investigated, because clearly one of the possible sources of motives for killing Kennedy had to be his improper sexual relationships, which were numerous and which involved very dangerous people, including people connected to Sam Giancana, the head of the mafia in Chicago. Let's see that information. I haven't seen a word about that. Maybe it's out there, but I'm not aware of it. And the press.
Professor, indulge me on one side because you have more expertise. You've written a book about this. Just on this, what President Trump is doing to get the hostages out in Hamas. Just give me a grade because you are an expert in this beyond your legal prowess. Is he doing the right things to get these hostages out and bring peace to the region?
He is. I think he's using force. He knows Hamas won't listen to reason or morality, and that the only way Hamas will capitulate is if they know they have no choice other than to do so. One more point. We're supposed to get the information about Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King also had a mixed record in history when it comes to his own sexuality. There allegedly are tape recordings of him involved in some sexual activities. Are we going to see that? The one thing we should never have is a statement that we've released everything when in fact there's stuff that hasn't been released. That's the worst of all possible worlds. I strongly suspect that's going to be true of Martin Luther King. I'm absolutely certain it was true of John Kennedy. And I know personally it's true of relation to Epstein. So I'm a hawk when it comes to disclosure because I've life. I have nothing to hide. I want everything disclosed about everybody. I may be one of the few people who can say that with complete confidence that it would never come back to hurt me. And therefore, it's very selfish. But I'm being selfish now. I want everything out there about everybody.
I love it. Professor, you always bring the goods. Thank you for your generous time and insight. I am smarter every time you come on here. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I am smarter every time you ask me questions. So
Very kind. Thank you, sir. All right, guys, what an amazing show. I'm so excited. We got a great panel coming your way tomorrow, and then a great show on Friday about where we are in crypto, the economy, tariffs. You're not going to want to miss that. Because I think so much of the economy is riding on what President Trump is doing. We're going to break it all down for you. I put out that newsletter free twice a week, Tuesdays and Fridays. Go to SeanSpicer.com. Sign up for free. If you are a subscriber on the VIP level, you can always gift it to somebody. And you can always sign up for a free trial, by the way. If you just want to check it out, because it is free, but then you can also get the paid content for free on a trial basis. So go to SeanSpicer.com and sign up. Thanks for being here. I look forward to seeing you back here tomorrow on The Sean Spicer Show.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.